Okay, hey, it's the weekend, and yesterday I didn't put the upload of it, but I got the broken bolt out of the manifold. I didn't use the Herbie trick. I actually used a torch. You'll see I heated it up in this area here. Got a cherry red and used a stud extractor to spin that thing out. I did that at work, and then I cleaned up the manifold so when it's time to put it back together, it's ready to go. Today what I'm going to do is I'm going to get these pistons out, take a look at them. One thing you'll notice, pistons all have arrows on them. Almost always the arrow here, I don't know if you can see that or not, almost always the arrow will point towards the front of an engine. Just a little note there, but in this one there's valve reliefs cut in the pistons, and it's pretty apparent to which one would go where, because the larger valve is typically the intake valve. So that's another thing to notice here. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take the pistons out. I'm just studying to see. We got some scratching there. I'm not sure what that is. If that's from detonation, which is spark knock, or what. But yeah, I just noticed them marks on the number 2 piston. Just about always pistons are numbered front to rear. In a V configuration, it's usually the leading cylinder that'll be the number 1 piston. Just about always it's that way. But alright, I'm going to take the oil pan off and I'll do a little more filming after that. First thing you want to do when you get under here is drain the oil out of it, because that'd be an embarrassing mess if you forgot to take the oil out and you drop the oil pan. So I've drained mine here, and the pan has bolts all the way around. They're probably 10 millimeter socket that I'll need to take that off. But one thing I wanted to tell you while I was under here is the pistons should be marked. They make tools to mark them so you know which cylinder it came out of if you're going to reuse that piston, to keep everything where it should be, you know. So that cylinder number 1 will go back in number 1 and so on. And the oil's just about drained here. Look at all the space you have in this car when you look around. I mean, a lot of cars you don't have this much room to work on. This thing's relatively easy to work on. In fact, it's fairly simple. Alright, we got the oil pan off. I was surprised that the oil pan was actually glued onto the car. I don't know if that's a standard thing for these Metros or if somebody's been in here before, but I really had to pry. That glue did not want to release. On the flywheel side, there's actually a shield that had some of the bolts hidden. I couldn't get to them, so I had to take that shield off. But this is what I found when I got inside. Major amounts of sludge down in there. Just disgusting amounts of sludge. And I found this piece of metallic substance. I'm hoping it's not a piston skirt. It actually feels sort of like aluminum or something, like kind of like that foil that's around conduit. I have no idea where this came from, but I'm going to keep searching. Hopefully it's not a piston skirt. But yeah, down there is that sludge, and if I had a screwdriver or something, I could show you how thick it was, and that just goes to show the amount of oil consumption and the way it was burning oil. It was against the sump there, and it's kind of scary because that engine out in the shed that I showed you a couple of posts ago, that engine was burned up from that same scenario. There was sludge around the pickup, and the center bearing on that spun and burned, and so that's what happened to that engine. So I'll keep digging here, and I'll film some more as I get the pistons out. Right in there's those rod caps I was telling you about. I got to take each bolt off of either side, or nut rather, and then the piston should go through. Usually there's a ridge on the top. I don't suspect that'll be an issue on this. They do make a tool called a ridge reamer that would take the ridge off if the piston wouldn't come out because of that, but I think we'll be alright on this one. Okay, I got the pistons out finally. No skirt damage, just a skirt down here. A little bit of scuffing in there. I marked them with a Sharpie. You can get a tool and scribe it in the top. But connecting rods all have little indicator arrows on them. I noticed they all point towards the front. So I got them back on the same connecting rod that they come off of. I checked out the bearings. I can't believe it. For the year and everything, they look fantastic. I mean, they're not worn through, very minimal wear in them. They didn't have any play. You can actually use a product called plastic gauge that you lay in there and torque it down, and then there's a little indicator to tell you how far you crushed it and all that kind of stuff. I'm sure you guys know all about that. One big surprise here, though. I thought for sure that these guys here would be carbon shut, and they're not. But it's because they're out, it's getting new ones anyway. Now, can anybody answer this question? What's different from this one to say an XFI? I heard XFIs only have like one ring or something silly like that. So if you know the answer to that, could you please post it in the bottom? But yeah, one other notice thing here with this. It's the first time I ever saw, these are the cylinders now with the pistons out, and you can see the rod journal down there on the crank. It's weird. I don't know how like a machinist would bore one of these, because this bore here, if you notice, is dead-ended. It doesn't go all the way through. There's like a little shelf at the bottom where the crank throw actually comes up into the cylinder. So it's actually like a long cylinder for what it is, but you wouldn't be able to send the pistons out the bottom even with the crank out. Unless what I'm looking at, you know what? I'm wrong. I think what I'm looking at is no, that is, yeah. It looks like it's built that way. I'll have to take the other one apart to see, but I was thinking for a second there it was a main bearing cap, but I don't know if that's the case. But yeah, it's kind of it's an unusual little car. I mean, it came apart pretty easy, and so that's pretty much what I have for today, guys. I'm going to get a parts list together, and then I'm going to ask you guys where should I get these parts? Who's going to be the cheapest? I'm definitely trying to work with a budget here on this and get in and out as cheap as possible. So if you have any suppliers that you use online, or if I'd be better off going to, like, one of the walk-in stores, let me know. Thanks. Bye. Alright, I went in and got changed. I got out my work clothes, and I'm looking at this thing, and it just really isn't adding up to me. We know we had a burnt valve. That occurred suddenly one day when I was driving. It just started missing. I put plugs in it, and normally plugs would get the miss fixed, and this time it didn't, and I had no compression in that cylinder. So we know where that was why it was running bad. But for the last 5 years, this thing has been using so much oil and smoking like crazy on startup and decel, which makes me think it's probably a valve seal issue. I knew I always had good compression in this thing. I had like 160 in every cylinder until the valve burnt. So my question is, do I dare not mess with the rings? I mean, they're here in my hand right now. Am I asking for trouble if I put a ring set in this car now? Do a fresh head with fresh valve seals and fresh valves? Or do I just put rings in it? My other question is, how do I know which? I think this is the oil ring, and I think these are compression rings, but could you guys post on that? I noticed the first ring is much thinner than the second one, and this third one I believe is the oil ring. So if you could comment on that. And my question with the oil ring is, these look pretty clear now. They could be worn, but I was expecting them to be all carboned up. So if you have thoughts on that, please post them, because I'm a little confused right now as to where my oil was going.